what to say today. I couldn't come up. Last year I came up with I couldn't understand conduction, and people thought that was pretty. But this year, what could I really say? And I thought back to when I had just been accepted at Harvard, and I listened to the words of one of my heroes, who was Martin Luther King. And he said, and I want to use this as the theme of my talk today, we've got some difficult days ahead. He told an overflowing crowd in Memphis, Tennessee, on the 3rd of April, 1968. And there was a strike going on, and there was violence, and it was all tumult. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop, and I've seen the promised land. And I may not get there with you, but I want you to know, tonight, as a people, we will get to the promised land. Now, sadly, I'm not predicting I'm going to be assassinated in the next 24 hours, but he was then assassinated within 24 hours. And if you think about U.S.-China relations, with all the tumult, can we say the same thing? U.S.-China relations has got some difficult days ahead, to say the least, and we should know. But it really doesn't matter to me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I have seen the promised land of U.S.-China relations. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know this morning that we, the Chinese and American people, will get to the promised land. This audience applauds. Many audiences would say, "Are you crazy?" No. But let me give you a few examples and why I think I've seen the promised land and we're going to get there. And one of them, let's see if we have any basketball fans. January 17th, 2003. Anybody know what day that was? Probably not. I was driving on the streets of Beijing, and all of a sudden, there's no traffic. And I go, that's a simple traffic. So I asked my driver, what's going on? And he said, everybody went home to watch Yao Ming play against Shaquille O'Neal. And I said to myself, just think how sports has been and will continue to bring us together. And it is a linchpin. It's where the National Committee actually started mostly in hosting the Chinese ping pong team. And then I thought about Ebola and how we all feared Ebola would ravage the world. And what happened? Chinese and American scientists worked together to stem the spread of Ebola. And then I think about it. I've been a global citizen, but my brother took a different path. Anybody from Dayton, Ohio in this audience? Well, he chose to live in Dayton, Ohio, and through his eyes, I watched Dayton deteriorate. I watched the big American companies, General Motors, National Cartridge, and others, move out, and the tax base deteriorated, and the city deteriorated. And then one day, I was invited to the opening of a factory in Dayton, Ohio, by Fuyao Glass America. And the town was reborn. And I could see the future. And there was a day in 2015, as you know, I had a nice business in Taiwan. And one morning I had breakfast with my colleagues in Taipei. I flew to Shanghai. I took the maglev, mostly downtown. I had lunch with friends in Shanghai. Then I flew nonstop to New York, and I had dinner with my mother. And I said, this is the promised land. When it is not an issue, but cross-strait relations are productive. And then in 2015, when I saw President Obama and President Xi at the signing of the Paris Accords, and I said, here, America and China are leading the world in doing what's right. And I saw the promised land. And then recently, in a meeting with President Xi, a small group of Americans, and he looks at us and he says, there are some of you in me, and some of me in you. And President Trump in December, much to the surprise of many, said, the United States and China can solve the world's problems if they work together. And he is right. If we're going to have world peace, if we're going to deal with climate change, terrorism, pandemics, it can only be resolved if the United States and China work together. He knows that. President Xi knows that. I know that. And you know that. But we will only reach the promised land. We will only reach there if you lend a hand. If the young people, Chinese and Americans, lend a hand. One of my other heroes, Robert Kennedy, was quoted by Bill Gates in his Harvard graduation speech. He said, to those who are given much, much is expected. When I look at this audience, when I look at you, when I talk to you, you have been educated at the finest institutions in the world. You were studying at the finest institutions in the world. If you choose not to participate, if your careers, if what you do in your spare time, you basically sit on your hands and you allow the fake news to prevail, whether it's in China or the United States, if you don't do anything, then we won't reach that promised land. But if you do, if you participate, the result will be different. You have benefited from what Henry Kissinger, Richard Nixon, Chairman Mao, Zhou Enlai have done. They sacrificed, they laid the foundation for what you have benefited from and what you will benefit from. If you participate in a meaningful way or function, if you don't, if you allow the fake news, the falsities on both sides, in the United States and in China, to win, the relationship will deteriorate. If you participate, you can't wait on